Well, welcome to the 700 Club. The White House is facing an unusual roadblock on the path to peace between Russia and Ukraine, and precisely that is, where in the world can we meet? Bringing the two leaders together for a one-on-one meeting is proving very difficult.
Well, President Trump admitted that Russia's Vladimir Putin might not be ready to stop the fighting. George Thomas has the latest on the efforts to end the war in Ukraine.
The White House attempts to end Europe's most destructive war is turning out to be a lot harder than expected.
The president has always said that there are areas of disagreement in this war that will have to be discussed and decided upon by these two countries. And so he wants these two countries to engage in direct diplomacy.
The push for a face-to-face meeting comes after Trump met with Putin in Alaska last week and then welcomed 7 European leaders and Ukraine's President Zelensky to the White House on Monday. They're looking at places like Geneva, Vienna, Rome, Budapest, and Doha as possible spots for the meeting. But Trump acknowledged late Tuesday that Putin might not be ready to end the fighting, telling radio host Mark Levin, quote, "It's possible. He doesn't want to make a deal."
I don't think anyone in Ukraine has the illusion that a meeting with Putin could suddenly bring peace. It's not as if at a meeting with Zelensky, Putin will suddenly say, "Yes, I was mistaken. I confess. I withdraw the troops. I give back the territories."
The Kremlin is also downplaying talk of a meeting between the two leaders anytime soon. On CBN's Faith Nation, Peter Doran of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies spoke of Putin's strategy.
Vladimir Putin is trying to win more victories at the negotiating table than he's won on the battlefield, and he's injecting poisoned pills into these negotiations, and Trump is trying to cut right through that.
For Ukraine, any peace deal has to come with strong security guarantees. There's discussion of sending European troops to Ukraine to prevent Russia from taking more land.
We have European allies that are ready right now to put themselves in the fray, to send their soldiers to Ukraine, and that message is going to be communicated to Russia. If you attack Ukraine again in the future, you pick a fight with us.
As for Trump, he's ruled out sending U.S. troops, but he's open to the idea of using air power and other support to back up the Europeans and the Ukrainians.
The president has definitively stated U.S. boots will not be on the ground in Ukraine, but we can certainly help in the coordination and perhaps provide other means of security guarantees to our European allies.
In the meantime, Ukraine says last night's massive drone attack shows Putin has no plans to back down. Russia launched almost 100 drones and missiles at Ukraine's Odessa region, sparking a large fire at a fuel and energy facility.
What the Russians do and have done over and over and over is stall. And it allows their military to continue to bash, batter, bombard the Ukrainians, which they've done.
George Thomas, CBN News.
I'm not hopeful for peace in this situation, and a lot of it has to do with the propaganda throughout Russia. They somehow believe, and earnestly believe, that they're fighting Nazis. They have so demonized the Ukrainians that if you have a shared family, that part of it is in Russia and part of it is Ukraine. I'm hearing reports from the Ukrainians that their Russian relatives, I mean, these are blood relatives, are saying, well, you deserve it. And given that propaganda, that brainwashing of a population, I'm not sure how in the world there can ever be peace. In other news, the Justice Department is investigating whether police in Washington, D.C. manipulated crime statistics. John Jessup has that story and more from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. The investigation comes as the administration and D.C. officials wrestle over control of the police department. Earlier this month, the president federalized law enforcement and ordered the National Guard to the district, citing rising crime. D.C. officials say crime rates have been dropping and the takeover is unnecessary. The White House reports 450 arrests since it began on August 7th. Today, more National Guard troops are arriving in addition to the more than 800 already patrolling the streets. They're coming from the Republican-led states of West Virginia, South Carolina, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Tennessee. Well, on the East Coast, beaches are closing as Hurricane Erin makes its track northward. The storm, not expected to make landfall, will pass closest to the United States on Thursday. High waves and dangerous surf has already been stirring along the North Carolina coast, fueling fears of flooding as potential 20-feet waves could hit the shore. The Outer Banks are under mandatory evacuation. Officials in New York and New Jersey ordered some beaches closed due to dangerous rip currents, and red flag warnings are flying all along the East Coast. Well, turning overseas to Israel, as many as 60,000 reserves will be called up to take part in the operation to conquer Gaza City. The move comes in the middle of a heated exchange over Australia's plan to recognize a Palestinian state. CBN's Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
Israel's defense minister approved plans for Operation Gideon's Chariots 2, the plan to conquer Gaza City. The operation will involve 5 divisions, and officials say the plan includes calling up as many as 60,000 reserves. The initial phase of the plan has already started, and within days, the IDF would be encouraging the city's residents to move south to safe zones. In the meantime, Israel is still considering the late ceasefire proposal for a phased hostage release, even though Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu recently has said he wants a comprehensive deal with all hostages released at once. On the international front, Israel is in a war of words with Australia's leader over his support for a Palestinian state. Earlier this week, Netanyahu sent a letter to Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. He said his stance pours, quote, fuel on this anti-Semitic fire and rewards Hamas terror, hardens Hamas's refusal to free the hostages, and emboldens those who menace Australian Jews and encourages the Jew hatred now stalking your streets. He concluded, it is not diplomacy, it is appeasement. Netanyahu also called Albanese a weak politician who betrayed Israel. Albanese brushed off the criticism.
What I say is that Israel, of course, increasingly there is global concern. And global concern because people want to see an end to the cycle of violence that we have seen for far too long.
Australia's Deputy Prime Minister said they are following the UK, France and Canada.
So we are very much within the mainstream of the international community, which has always supported a two-state solution. And in that context, what we want to see is in this moment dialogue between nations.
In response to this growing movement, veteran journalist David Bedin, who has followed the Palestinian Authority for 3 decades, published a list of questions these nations should consider. Will the planned Palestinian state abolish the Palestinian Charter, which mandates the destruction of Israel? Will the planned Palestinian state revoke the law that guarantees salaries to anyone who murders a Jew, the so-called pay-to-slay policy? And will the planned Palestinian state eliminate educational materials that glorify the murder of Jews? Palestinian Media Watch is also reporting that Fatah, the political arm of the Palestinian Authority, hosted a summer camp for 200 young boys and girls with the goal to create a generation that will, quote, continue the path of the martyrs and prisoners. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Gordon, back over to you.
We're here to bring you the real news from Israel and the real truth. Everyone wants to stop the cycle of violence, but if you blame Israel for that cycle of violence, you're putting blame exactly in the wrong place. Whether it's the PLO, the Palestinian state, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Popular Front, all of these organizations have vowed to destroy Israel. It's in their charters, it's in their documents, it's in what they regularly say in Arabic. If you go to the mosques on the West Bank, what do they routinely preach? They preach the destruction of Jews. And if you want to end the cycle of violence, well, that's your target. The ideology of hate that is routinely expressed, routinely affirmed as if it's some kind of great noble cause to engage in a jihad to wipe Israel off the map and kill all the Jews. That's what they earnestly believe. And until that belief is broken, until that belief no longer exists within the Palestinian people, well, you're never going to have peace. And the cycle of violence is going to recur again and again and again. We've seen it since 1948. When in the world is the world stage going to actually believe it? Every single time the Palestinian people have been offered a state, they have steadfastly refused it. Why? Because they want the whole thing. Whether it was 1948, 1967, the Camp David Accords was a famous one with Egypt finally coming to peace with Israel, the return of the Sinai. But what happens to Anwar Sadat? He's assassinated by the Muslim Brotherhood because he came to peace with Israel. And he recognized Israel has a right to exist, and the Jewish people have a right to self-determination. Well, the Palestinian people have that same right of self-determination, but they have steadfastly refused it and steadfastly refused to build a state. So instead of rewarding the ideology and rewarding the terrorism that is so clearly evident, let's stand firm with Israel and stand against this hatred.